Hare Krishna, everyone. Jai, welcome to today's class.
हरे कृष्ण माता जी।
हरे कृष्ण
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hari Bol. So let us start with our Mangala Charanam. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Charane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatadesha Tarane. Try. So it would be very helpful for me if more of you could turn on your videos. Then I feel like I'm talking to an actual class and not a few humans and others' names on a screen. All right. Thank you. So today we are going to be starting chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge. So yeah, this is continuing from chapter 3. So Krishna ended in the last verse of chapter 3. He said, thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So he's saying that, Arjuna, you are transcendental to the senses, mind, and intelligence. So now this is the segue here, that now he's going to go deeper into this transcendental knowledge of the self, and how transcendental knowledge is a weapon. So Arjuna is a warrior. He knows about weapons. He spent much of his life being trained in how to use weapons. So Krishna is giving him the ultimate training here and training him in the weapon of knowledge. And we're going to hear that at the end of chapter 4, he's going to conclude by saying, now with the weapon of knowledge, whoosh, slash through your doubts that are born of ignorance, right? And stand up. Armed with yoga, stand and fight. So he's putting it in this warrior language, that this knowledge is a weapon to conquer lust. He calls it the jnana asina. So asina means like a sword. So knowledge is like a sword that cuts through ignorance, cuts through doubts, cuts through lust, cuts through greed, cuts through envy, just cuts all of these away from our consciousness and leaves us clean and pure. All right, so let's start. We'll read the first 3 verses. Yeah, so someone please read the translations here for 1, 2, and 3. Go ahead, Komal.
Hare Krishna. Chapter 4, verse number 1. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna said, I instructed this impermissible science of yoga to the sun god Vivasvan, and the Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. Verse 2. The supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way, but in course of time, this succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. Text 3. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and can therefore understand the transcendental
Transcendental mystery of this science. You got cut off there a little bit. All right, thank you. So Krishna starts off talking about the subject of transcendental knowledge by explaining how knowledge is received. And knowledge is received through parampara, right? Evam parampara praptam. That we attain this knowledge through parampara, through the disciplic succession. And he gives an example of a disciplic succession, starting with himself. And this disciplic line started 120,400,000 years ago when he personally instructed Vivasvan, the sun god. And the sun god heard, he was a qualified disciple, and he heard it very well, and he realized it. And then he turned around and instructed it to his son, Manu. And then Manu instructed it to his son, Ikshvaku. So, like that. And Krishna's saying the same thing I'm going to tell you now. And yeah, so this is an important principle, is the principle of disciplic succession, that we can't just approach Krishna directly, but we have to approach Krishna through Guru and through the acharyas. We can't just step over everyone and be like, all right, it's me and Krishna. Right? I guess it's better me and Krishna than me and without Krishna, but the complete picture is me and Krishna and all the devotees that are helping me get to Krishna, that I'm not just the servant of Krishna, although I am the servant of Krishna, but the way that I serve Krishna is dasa dasa das anudas, right? Is by becoming the servant of the servant of the servant of his servant, uh, many times removed. And in one sense, somebody might think, oh, well, why not just cut out the middleman? Why can't we just have a direct relationship with Krishna? Well, the thing is that it's actually for our benefit to have all of these, so-called middlemen, gurus and acharyas in the line of disciplic succession, because when Krishna gives the knowledge, you see, for example, in Srimad Bhagavatam, when Krishna gives knowledge to Lord Brahma, it's only 4 verses. Lord Vishnu speaks 4 verses, right? Chaturshloki Bhagavatam from Canto 2, Chapter 9, text 33 to 36. That's it. And Brahma is so intelligent, he understands it, right? He understands it. But from our point of view, there's a lot missing, right? That's for us, if we just read those 4 verses, we're not going to have complete knowledge of ourselves and Krishna and the whole spiritual world and all the incarnations and the creation and the everything else, right? Krishna's Vraj Leela and Dwarka. Like, we're not going to get that from those 4 verses. Brahma is intelligent enough that he can unpack those, and from those 4 verses, expand all knowledge. So then when Brahma instructs Narada, then he gives a little more, right? And then when Narada instructs Vyas, he gives a little more. And when Vyas instructs Shukadev, he gets a little more. Shukadev instructs Sutta, we basically get most of the Bhagavatam. And then when Sutta passes that on to the sages of Naimisharanya, then we get our current Bhagavatam. And then the acharyas, even it doesn't even stop there, but after that, acharyas give their commentaries on the Bhagavatam and successive commentaries on the Bhagavatam, then the following acharyas read their commentaries and assimilate all that and write their commentaries on Bhagavatam. And then Srila Prabhupada studies those commentaries and he wrote his purports on practically every verse of the Bhagavatam. So in that way, as the knowledge comes down through the disciplic succession, it expands. So each link in the chain, they hear it and they realize it because they have the qualification to realize it. And when they pass it on, they pass it on with their realizations. They pass it on with their realization, so it's more rich. Each time it's more rich. It's like you take milk and it gets more and more thick as you boil it. So they're basically like boiling the milk and it's becoming more sweet. Yeah. Another way you can think about it is as a river, right? So if you look at take any river like the Ganga. So if you go to Gangotri in India, there's a place called Gomukh just north of there, which is the source of the Ganga when it emerges from the Himalayan glacier, right? It comes out of there. And it's just a small stream. It starts out just a small stream that you can just, walk across or something. And then as it goes, then all these tributaries are flowing into it and it's getting wider and deeper and wider and deeper. And then by the time you get down to the Bay of Bengal, where there's the delta of the Ganga, it's huge, right? You can barely even see the other side of it. It's so expansive and it's deep and it splits into so many different tributaries and it covers like, miles and miles and just flowing into the, millions of gallons of water flowing into the Bay of Bengal at every moment, So it's like that. So it starts off, knowledge may start off with just a few verses, and then it expands and expands. With each link in each acharya in the chain of disciplic succession, they're adding to it, adding to it, adding to it, adding to it, like that. So yeah. Even now, it continues to expand, right? If you go to any verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then you go online, there's a website that's called srimadbhagavatamclass.com. If you go there, then you'll see there's like for almost every verse of the Bhagavatam, there's several classes that are given on those verses by different senior devotees. Sometimes, gurus and sannyasis are, always some, highly advanced devotee. And then they're giving their realizations and their realizations. And, now if we could write, volumes and we could take those and write volumes on each verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam and keep expanding it like that. So that's the beauty of the disciplic succession, that as we go down the chain, it's not that we get further away from Krishna, right? I guess that was another class I was giving. We were reading about how Arjuna was standing there right next to Krishna in the Battle of Kurukshetra, but our spiritual masters are representatives of Krishna. So if we're, standing next to our gurus, then Prabhupada says that's non-different than standing right next to Krishna, because the guru is a representative of Krishna and they're giving us the knowledge that Krishna gave. They're giving us the mercy. So it's not just the knowledge that's coming through disciplic succession, but it's also the mercy. So there's Krishna's mercy and then Brahma's mercy and Narada's mercy and Vyasadev's mercy and Shukadev's mercy and on and on and on. And then we're so fortunate that in our parampara, we have Lord Chaitanya. We have Krishna coming twice. Well, you could say Vyasadeva is also there. He's the literary incarnation of Krishna. Narada Muni's there. He's empowered Bhakti Shakti Vaishavatar of Krishna. We have like very empowered people, and we have the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, coming twice, because he comes again as Lord Chaitanya. And then, we have the six Goswamis, who are all eternal associates of the Lord that came down with him from Goloka to assist him in his pastimes. They are in our disciplic succession, and as are most of our acharyas, if not all of them. So it's very, very wonderful. And each time we get more and more mercy, right? Because it said that the devotee is more merciful than Krishna. So we're getting so the further removed we are in that sense, the more fortunate we are, actually. because they're getting more knowledge, more realizations, more mercy, and more blessings. So that's the glory of the disciplic succession. But sometimes, unfortunately, what happens is that this disciplic succession becomes broken, right? Because there's not a qualified person to keep it going. So there's a guru who's qualified, and maybe he initiates, several disciples who seem to be promising. He has high hopes that at least one of them will become a pure devotee and, qualified to be a guru. But sometimes it happens that none of his disciples actually become very advanced, right? Maybe they fall away from Krishna consciousness, and then there's no one really qualified to pass on the knowledge. So then if that happens for an extended period of time, then Krishna becomes concerned. Right? Krishna is actually paying attention to the disciplic succession because this is so important. The disciplic succession is it's a chain that Krishna is throwing down the well, like a rope, like a lifeline, to pull us back to Godhead. So if that chain breaks, then all of us souls down here in the bottom of the dark well, here in the material world, we don't have any hope for going back to Godhead. And Krishna wants us to go back to Godhead. So he's like, as soon as the chain gets broken, he's like, well, we have to go and fix this. So then if he can't find someone else to fix it, he comes and fixes it himself. So that's why he says, this supreme science was received through the chain of disciplic succession, and saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, right? Yogo nashta parantapa. Nashta means it was destroyed. It was broken, and therefore the science that it is appears to be lost. So that's a big tragedy when that happens. So then Krishna comes, and now he's going to speak the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna and make sure that knowledge is available to the conditioned souls of this world. And it's also significant here that he says, Imam Rajar Shayo Vidu, that the saintly kings understood it in that way. The Rajas, the kings, who are rishis, saints. So actually every king is supposed to be a Raja Rishi. They're supposed to be a saintly person. They're supposed to have spiritual knowledge because the king's duty is to protect the people. Right? So this is also connected to what we were learning in the end of the last chapter about lust. Right? Yesterday we were talking about lust and how lust is the greatest enemy. So the king is meant to, right? We learned in chapter 2 that kshatriya means to protect from harm, right? The kshatriya's duty is to protect the citizens from harm. And that means they need to be very aware of any enemies that may be in the kingdom that can hurt the citizens. And Krishna is saying that the worst enemy of the citizens, of all humanity, is lust. So the king has to protect the citizens not just from, antagonistic neighboring countries or, terrorists or criminals or wild animals or, physical dangers like that, but also from the internal enemies. And for that, the kings need knowledge. They need transcendental knowledge. They need this jnana asina, the weapon of knowledge, so that they can slay this enemy of lust and teach others how to be safe from the enemy of lust. Okay, so, and that's why Krishna speaks to the kings, right? He spoke to the sun god. Sun god is the king of the sun planet. He's speaking to Arjuna. Arjuna's in the royal family. And even Vivasvan, when he spoke to Manu, who's the ruler of mankind. Ikshvaku was also a king. So even though these kings, generally we think of knowledge being received and passed on by the Brahmins, right? That they're the teachers, but it's also a duty of kings that every ruler should also be a saint and should have wisdom. Because yat acharati shreshtas tat evetar Arjuna, right? That whatever action a great person performs, common people follow. So the kings need to know what to do and what not to do and act accordingly and have knowledge and give that to people, and people will listen because they have the authority to make people listen. and make people follow. So that's what Krishna wants for the world, is saintly kings. And that's why this whole battle of Kurukshetra is being fought, is because Krishna didn't want an evil, corrupt king like Duryodhana. He wanted Yudhisthira, because Yudhisthira is like, he's the son of Dharma personified. And Yudhisthira was such a religious person, such a noble, righteous person, that Krishna knew that he would protect the citizens, and he would guide them also towards a pious life and towards devotion to the Lord. Okay. And then, but it's not just any king that Krishna is going to speak to, but he says in text 3 that there's also a qualification for receiving this knowledge. So Krishna says this ancient science of the relationship of the Supreme, I'm telling it to you, Arjuna, because you are my devotee. He says, Bhaktosi and me sakha, and you're my friend. You're my devotee, and you're also my friend, and therefore you can understand the transcendental mystery of this science. So yeah, he uses the word rahasyam. Rahasyam literally means a mystery, something that's very difficult to unravel. So someone who's not a devotee and who's not Krishna's friend, if they hear the Bhagavad Gita, they're not going to understand it. They're just going to, be confused, or even if they understand it, intellectually, they're not going to be able to apply it. They're not going to have the realization. And that's what happens. All these, mundane speculators or impersonalists who try to comment on the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada gets so angry with them. And Srila Prabhupada calls them all kinds of names. Mundane wranglers and rascals and fools and misleaders and cheaters and all that. Why? Because they take Krishna's words and they misunderstand it and they misinterpret it and they put their own agenda in there, and they basically reject Krishna and present a whole different Bhagavad Gita that denies the existence of Bhagavan, right? How can you have a Bhagavad Gita without Bhagavan? Anyways, somehow or other they think that it's possible. So they put their bogus Bhagavad Gitas out there. Why? Because they're envious of Krishna. They're not Krishna's devotees and they're not Krishna's friends. Actually, they're Krishna's enemies. They're like envious of Krishna, and they want to convince people that Krishna is not the eternal supreme personality of Godhead. He's just some, mundane personality, just like you and me, that comes to this world and says a few smart things and dies, and, like that, like we do. So that's very offensive, this Mayavadi interpretations of the Bhagavad Gita or anything. Lord Chaitanya said, Mayavadi, Krishna aparadi. Mayavadis are offenders of Krishna. So you have to be very careful, even with knowledge, even with what appears to be transcendental knowledge, to make sure it's coming from the right source. That's why Prabhupada gave us Bhagavad Gita as it is. And that's why we need to understand the principle of disciplic succession, because there are many Bhagavad Gitas out there, but most of them are written by people who are not actually in a bona fide disciplic succession, or not in one of the authorized 4 Vaishnava sampradayas. And so their Bhagavad Gita is not going to be potent, it's not going to fulfill the purpose of Krishna speaking the Bhagavad Gita, which is to induce us to surrender to him fully and to love him, become his devotee. Okay, so we have to be selective. We have to use our intelligence, use our discrimination. This is the right use of discrimination, right? Discrimination is not a bad thing, but sometimes we misuse it, right? We discriminate against people based on their race, their gender, their age, or, country of birth or whatever. That's the way that that's the misuse of discrimination. But discrimination also has a good use, and that is to discriminate between, who is good association, who's not good association. What's favorable for Krishna, what's not favorable for Krishna. What is an authorized scripture and what is an unauthorized scripture or commentary on scripture. So that's a right use of intelligence. Okay, any questions on this principle of disciplic succession? Yes, Daya.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Mataji, like in Bhagavad Gita, there's after introduction, there's a like written the parampara succession of Gaudiya Madhva, like whatever parampara there's written in Krishna, Brahma, Narada, Vyasa, Madhva, and like that is different, and in that Arjuna is not there.
Yeah. So the thing is that Arjuna didn't have disciples, right? Or at least he didn't have notable disciples.
Like I have a
So
confusion that like I said, after Arjuna, who is the next who got this knowledge? If we are talking about chain.
yeah, that's what I was just saying that, see, Krishna spoke to, he spoke to Arjuna, but Arjuna didn't continue the disciplic succession in that way, right? It's not that everybody that hears Bhagavad Gita is going to become an acharya, right? Like right now you're hearing Bhagavad Gita from, Srila Prabhupada's purports and my explanations. And, so we're all hearing Bhagavad Gita in disciplic succession, but most of us are not going to become acharyas, right? We're not going to have our names added on this list in the future, right? Who knows? Maybe one of us will, but most of us probably won't. You see, so it's not that everybody who receives the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita in disciplic succession is necessarily going to be, the next acharya. But the point is that we're going to learn it, we're going to apply it in our lives, we're going to live it, we're going to make our lives perfect, go back to Godhead. We're going to teach it to our children, we're going to share it with our friends, we're going to give classes and, distribute Bhagavad Gitas and spread it as far as and wide as we can. But we're not necessarily going to be on the list here of, prominent acharyas in the disciplic succession. So this list here is just the most prominent. Right?
Mataji, I have another question that as Krishna is saying, I have explained this knowledge to son Vivaswan. So why he choose Vivaswan in past to give knowledge this Bhagavad Gita? I know the reason that he was king. Other than that, because there are many gods like Indra god is there and sun god as well as. So why sun
Yeah.
god?
I don't know what the context was for that recitation of the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything about that, but it's an interesting question. Okay. Another thing, yeah, if you look at that list of disciplic succession at the end of the introduction, you see that it's not including everyone here. It's just including really the most prominent names. And even, for example, number 26 is Narottam Das Thakur. Okay, so Narottam Das Thakur lived from 1550 to 1587. He lived a relatively short life. And then the next name is Vishwanath. It's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He was born in 1626. So he was born after Narottam Das Thakur had already left this world. So it's not that Vishwanath was a direct disciple of Narottam. There was some intermediary, links in between them. But because none of those intermediary links became prominent acharyas, they're not listed. Right? So sometimes that happens. And especially like, in the early ones where we've got Jnana Sindhu, Dayanidhi, Vidyanidhi, there are like hundreds of years in between some of those, because this is going from the time of creation. There are maybe thousands of years in between some of them. Of course, people lived longer then, they lived for 100,000 years, so that's, reasonable. But still, we're going from the time of creation, right? When Krishna spoke to Brahma, when there was only the two of them in existence, or maybe not even spoke, but revealed knowledge from within the heart, Tene Brahma Hrida. So it goes all the way from the time of creation to the time of, or before the creation, to the present day. Srila Prabhupada, and then his disciples, our gurus. So there's a lot of missing links there. But Prabhupada listed the prominent ones. Also, since we're talking about disciplic succession, it's important to note here that although this is called the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, often we say that we are members of the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. But when Lord Chaitanya appeared in our Sampradaya, he substantially changed things because he's God, right? He's the only one that can substantially change things, right? Like the acharyas, someone like Srila Prabhupada, they can change the details, but they're not going to change the principles. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead can change whatever he wants, right? He can change even the principles. So if you study the teachings of Madhva and compare them to the teachings given by Lord Chaitanya, you'll find like quite significant differences. Actually, I just gave a whole Bhagavatam class on this topic. You can look it up on YouTube if you want. It's called Madhvas and Gaudiyas. What is the connection or something? What is the connection between these two sampradayas? Or not two sampradayas, but these two groups of Vaishnavas. Yeah, so I talk about ways in which Lord Chaitanya basically revolutionized our sampradaya. And how, yeah, actually some of the teachings of Madhva Acharya, although there are definitely common things and very fundamental things, obviously, because it's the same, because Lord Chaitanya wouldn't have taken birth if it wasn't, a bona fide Vaishnava Sampradaya. So it's definitely that. But there are some things there that we would hear and we would be just like, what? Right? For example, Madhva Acharya he doesn't talk about Radharani at all. Right? He doesn't really, Radharani is not a part of his philosophy or worshipable Lord or divine couple. That concept is not there. So, yeah. Anyways, we won't take too long on that point. But rest assured, the Sampradaya coming from Lord Chaitanya is 100% bona fide, exceptionally potent, and can take us back home, back to Godhead. And not just back to Godhead, but to the highest realm of, Goloka Vrindavan. And that's what Lord Chaitanya came to give us, and that's what his disciples, came to pass on. So we are Gaudiya Vaishnavas. That means we are Vaishnavas following in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay, so let's continue then. Let's go ahead and read, let's see. Read 4 and 5, please. Hitka.
Arjuna said, the sun god Vivasvan is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him? Text number 5. The personality of God had said, many, many words both you and I have found. I can remember all of them, but you can't. Oh, subdued of the enemy.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we were talking about this yesterday, right? One of you asked the question about what about if we have doubts? So Arjuna has a doubt. The sun god was older than you by far, by hundreds and thousands of years. So how is it that you instructed him? How were you even, there? So Prabhupada says in the purport that, that Arjuna is asking this question on behalf of other people, right? Others who don't understand Krishna, are not aware that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and may have those types of doubts. So for clarification, Arjuna asked this question because he wants Krishna to explain. He wants him to speak authority. He basically wants him to, establish his credentials for others. So I sometimes, when a new teacher is coming to give class, then if the audience doesn't know that person, then it's important to give an introduction, like a nice introduction, that this is such and such, they're from this place, and this is their credentials, right? They've been practicing Krishna consciousness for this many of years, they have this Shastric degree, they have this, all their accolades. because then it gives the audience faith. Oh, wow, this person must be a very advanced devotee. I'm sure they have a lot of really deep realizations. I really want to hear what they have to say. Whereas if there's no introduction and the person just sits down and you don't know who they are, they could be anyone, and you're just like, all right, let's see what they got to say then. And you kind of like, you have your guards up, you're sort of like, you're kind of maybe a little skeptical even, especially if they might look funny or something, right? You might be discriminated against them for some external reason, and then having some doubts about their character or their knowledge or something. But then someone comes along and says, "Oh, this person, they had years of personal association with Srila Prabhupada, and they've done this and that, and they opened this new temple in a country where nobody had ever been. They pioneered, and they've written books." And then you're like, "Oh, wow, this person must be really great." Kishori.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, I have a question in chapter 4, first verse. In purport, Krishna is saying that I gave Gita to Vivaswan at least 12,400,000 years ago. So Mataji, he gave Bhagavad Gita to Arjun when? He gave Bhagavad Gita to Vivaswan many years ago. So Mataji, why Krishna again gave Bhagavad Gita to Arjun?
Oh, because that's what he says. He says that over the course of time, this science was lost, right? Because there wasn't a qualified person to pass the knowledge on. So the disciplic succession got broken. And Krishna had to come again and speak it again. Right? Okay.
Okay,
So you're welcome. All right, so yeah, so Arjuna is asking this question on behalf of other people because he knows that now Krishna is going to speak about himself, and we're going to hear all about the transcendental nature of Krishna's birth, his appearance in this world, his activities, and everything, and how all of the ways, or at least the key ways, in which Krishna is different from, ordinary people in this world. Yeah, so he starts off saying, "Oh, Arjuna," so this is very eloquent. "Many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot." So Krishna can remember everything because he doesn't take birth the way we do. See, our problem is that when we take birth into a material body, we forget everything about our past life because it's such a traumatic experience, for the soul to be forced out of the body and then, in that limbo state for a while, and then forced into another body, and they have to be packed up in the womb and, suffering a lot of things that's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then the process of birth is really traumatic. And then you have to be a baby and you're just born into ignorance and you can't even control your own, passing water, passing stool all over yourself, and you can't walk and you can't talk and you can't chew and you can't, it's really miserable being a baby. So, yeah, so all of these traumatic experiences, Krishna, by his grace, allows us to forget, right? That's why we can't remember much about, at least before 2 years old or before 3 years old, because it was too distressful, right? Somebody's in a very bad accident, or sometimes, if somebody is really badly abused as a child, even as an older child, they'll forget it. There's a mechanism in the human psyche that blocks out, it just blocks out really difficult experiences so that we can function and not, be just mentally dysfunctional. So yeah, so that's Krishna's mercy. And he says he gives intelligence, mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha, that he gives knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So we forget everything from our previous lives and even the first few years of this life. But Krishna remembers everything because for Krishna, there's no trauma. Krishna doesn't suffer the way we suffer when we have, because Krishna doesn't take on, he doesn't leave a material body, and he doesn't have to stay, in the limbo state while Yamaraj is deciding where to put him. And he doesn't have to be, packed up in the womb of a mother, and he doesn't have to take material birth into another material body, because Krishna is totally spiritual. He's spiritual, and when he appears, he comes in his original spiritual form, and he comes by his own sweet will. He comes when he wants, and he leaves when he wants. And for him, everything is just part of his transcendental pleasure pastimes, right? Whereas for us, it's not pleasure, and it's not pastimes, and it's not transcendental. It's material, and it's miserable, and it's doing things, a lot of situations that we don't want to be in but are forced into. So there's a big difference between us and Krishna, and that's Prabhupada speaks about it at length in the purport to text 5. Right? Yeah, Krishna doesn't change his body. His body is always Sat Chit Ananda. And he is Advaita, which means there's no distinction between his body and himself. Everything in relation to him is spirit, whereas the conditioned soul is different from his material body. Because the Lord's body and self are identical, his position is always different from that of the ordinary living entity, even when he descends to the material platform or to the material world. So demons can't understand this. They can't understand how Krishna comes. They just assume that he must be a material. If he looks like, us, he must be like us. They don't understand how Krishna can. He comes in a totally transcendental way, and he disguises himself to look like an ordinary person, but he's not actually. So therefore, he remembers everything. Kishore, you have another question?
No, Mataji.
No. Okay, your hand was. You have to remember to put your hand down when you finish asking. Okay, so that's the beginning of Krishna's explanation about how he's different from us and how Arjuna forgot everything, but it's all fresh in Krishna's mind. So let's go on and read. So the next verse is going to talk about this. Is going to talk about, in the next few verses, we're going to hear about how Krishna descends to this world, when he descends, and why he descends. So we're going to hear all about the transcendental nature of Krishna's appearance and activities in this world. So let's go ahead and read 6, we read 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Mataji, may I?
Go ahead.
Chapter 4, verse 5. The personality of Godhead said, Many, many births, both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot. O subduer of the enemy. 6. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. 7. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata and the predominant tribes of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. 8. To deliver the pure and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion. I myself appear, millennium after millennium.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, so in text 6, Krishna says, Sambhavami Atmamayaya. So Sambhavami means, that I come, I appear, I manifest myself. How? Atmamayaya, by his own internal energy. So we appear by Mahamaya, by Mahamaya. Because we're in Maya, the material energy, arranges us a body, and we get a body which is also a product of the material energy. But Krishna has nothing to do with the material energy. He never directly contacts the material energy. His body is not made of material energy. It's not influenced by the 3 modes of material energy. it's completely different. His existence is totally transcendental to all of that. So he comes Atma Maya by his own internal energy in his own original form. Yeah, he appears in his own body, he does not change his body. So Prabhupada says, yeah, when he appears, he does so in his same original body by his internal potency. In other words, Krishna appears in this material world in his original eternal form with two hands holding a flute. He appears exactly in his eternal body, uncontaminated by this material world. Although he appears in the same transcendental body and is Lord of the universe, it still appears that he takes his birth like an ordinary living entity. Yeah. And because he wants to have his pastimes as if he's like an ordinary boy, then says that although his body does not deteriorate like a material body, it still appears that the Lord grows from childhood to boyhood and boyhood to youth. But he never ages past youth. So that's a big difference between an ordinary living being. Yeah, so that's something that's unique about Krishna's appearance in this material world, is that he goes through these stages, these growing stages of childhood, because in the spiritual world, he's Navayoganam. He's always just, eternally a youth. He's always at his Kishore age. But in the material world, sometimes he's a baby and sometimes he's a little boy and sometimes he's an older boy, right? He goes to Kamara and Boganda and then to Kishore. And then Prabhupada says this really interesting thing about Krishna's appearance. He says, uses an analogy that Krishna's appearance and disappearance are like the sun's rising, moving before us, and then disappearing from our eyesight. When the sun is out of sight, we think the sun is set. And when the sun is before our eyes, we think the sun is on the horizon. Actually, the sun is always in its fixed position. But owing to our defective, insufficient senses, we calculate the appearance and disappearance of the sun in the sky. So like that, it looks like the sun is coming up and it's getting higher, higher, higher. Then it comes to its apex at midday and then down, 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 down. And then it sets and then it's gone. So in the same way, it looks like Krishna is born and then he's a newborn baby and then he grows up, he's getting older, he's a child, and then he's a teenager, and then he's a youth, and then he's gone. He disappears. So it looks like he's going through those stages like the sun, but actually the sun's not changing. It's just due to our vision that it looks like the sun is going across the sky. Actually, the sun is fixed. That's what Prabhupada is saying here. So Krishna is always existing. He's eternally existing. He's never born. He's never, for us also, Najayate Mriyate Vakadachin, for this, even for us, there's no birth or death for the soul, but that just applies for the soul. But still, from the Vedic perspective, the Vedic meaning of birth is that we accept a material body. So even the soul exists eternally and existed before our birth. Still, when the soul enters a new material body, we call that birth. And when the soul leaves a material body, we call that death. So for conditioned souls, birth and death are real, but they pertain to the body. They don't pertain to the soul. That's why Krishna says, for the soul, there is neither birth nor death. But for the body, there is birth and death. And our experience in this world is that babies are born and, people die at some point, usually after old age. But Krishna is never born and never dies because he never, in any sense, because he never takes a material body. He never changes his body. So that's a huge difference between Krishna's existence, his appearance in this material world, and ours. Yeah, I was just having an argument with, not an argument, but we were having a little discussion with one devotee because it was someone's birthday and she said, instead, everyone was saying happy birthday. So then she said happy appearance day. So when I was a young devotee, we would always say that happy appearance day, right? Because the idea is the soul doesn't take birth or die. So, but then another devotee told me, a long time ago that actually, it's not appropriate to say happy appearance day for devotees unless unless the person like descended, you know, like Srila Prabhupada is a Nitya Siddha who descended from the spiritual world, and you know, his birth, he wasn't forced to take birth in a material body, right? And in one sense, Srila Prabhupada's body was not material, right? It was spiritual. Like we learned from Rupa Goswami that the body of the pure devotee is never to be considered material or impure, because they only use it in Krishna's service. And it's just like the waters of the Ganga, right? That it looks like there's pollution or, you know, mud or bubbles in the Ganga, but still the water is always pure. And if you take bath in that water, you'll also be purified. So in the same way, it looks like Srila Prabhupada had a material body, but his body was, you know, exceptional because he used it only in the service of the Lord. So it was spiritual, and you can, that's why we call it Srila Prabhupada's appearance day, right? But when we take birth in the world, in our, you know, current material bodies, it's a different story, right? Because yeah, like I was saying, we're forced to take birth. We don't want to take birth in this material world. We're not coming here, or maybe some of you are exalted souls who were sent from the spiritual world to spread Krishna consciousness, but I'm pretty sure I wasn't. And yeah, that due to my, you know, past sins and material desires and attachments and karma, I got this material body, in which I'm trying to purify by engaging it in Krishna's service. So yeah, I definitely took birth in the Vedic sense that I was forced to accept a material body, which is growing and growing old and will die, and I will leave this body. So that's why we call it the cycle of repeated birth and death, right? So, but hopefully this will be our last birth in the material world. We can make this birth a glorious one, because we got the rare birth as human beings, and we got the even more rare opportunity to be able to associate with devotees and come in contact with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and to make our lives perfect. Okay, so now in text 7, Krishna says when he takes birth, yada yada. So yada means when. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir. The dharma means religion, and glani means decline or discrepancies. Whenever there's a decline in dharma, whenever dharma is at risk, whenever it looks like dharma is endangered and going extinct, then Krishna comes to yeah, well, he'll say that in the next verse why he comes, but this is when he comes. Whenever dharma becomes absent or is too far declined, that human beings don't have access to spiritual knowledge, right? Like I was saying, that Krishna is very concerned with this world because the earth planet is very dear to Krishna. When Krishna descends, he descends on the earth planet, right? He doesn't really go to Swarga. He doesn't go so much to lower planets or subterranean heavenly planets, or he comes to the earth again and again, the earth. And when acharyas come from the spiritual world, they come to the earth. Right? Krishna speaks to the Bhagavad, he also speaks to the sun god, right? But so Krishna, he pays attention to the earth more than other planets because this earth is the place, it's the place from which the soul has the best chance of going back to Godhead. Because in the hellish planets, the suffering is too much, right? And there's not a lot of preaching going on down there, and there's not a lot of scope for doing bhakti in hell on any of the hellish planets, right? Everyone's just down there screaming with pain and getting punished. So nobody has the peace of mind to be able to chant Hare Krishna. It's just too much. And then in heaven, it's the opposite. The enjoyment is too much. People are so absorbed in just, sense pleasures and material happiness and all that, life is too good. They just get caught up in enjoying themselves. So it's very rare that they're going to inquire into the absolute truth. But earth is good because it's just the right balance, right? That there's just enough suffering to make us be like, God help me, right? And there's just enough comfort that we can be like, all right, now I'm going to sit down and chant my rounds peacefully. That we can actually do bhakti. And also another factor about this earth that's special is that This earth is called Karmastan. It's the place where we generate karma. So everything that we do here on this earth, we get either good karma or bad karma, and that determines our next birth, right? So if we get a lot of good karma, then we'll go to the heavenly planets. And heavenly planets, we're not really generating karma, we're just burning off our good karma. We're just depleting our good karmic bank account. And then when that good karma is gone, then we come back to earth. And hellish planets, we're also not getting karma, we're burning off our bad karma. So hellish planets, you don't have a lot of choices. You're just like thrown here, thrown there. So and then when all of our bad karma is burned off from our sinful activities, then we gradually come back to earth. Also in animal species, animals, even though they may appear to be doing sinful things, like killing other animals and this and that and the other thing, they don't get karma because they're animals, right? They're just driven by the modes of nature, the super soul. They don't have scope. They don't have the intelligence to make choices in life. It's very limited. So human beings on earth, we are the ones who really have the most scope for making choices. We have the most options for how to live our life. And we have the intelligence to, we're given the intelligence with which to use, and we're meant to use it responsibly to make the right choices. So if we make the wrong choices, then we get punished for that. When we make the right choices, we get rewarded for that. So Krishna comes to this earth because he's thinking, I need to teach these humans on earth how to make good choices so that they can get free from karma. So they don't have to go to hell to get punished for their bad karma, and they don't have to go to heaven to get, rewarded or punished for their good karma. You could see it. It's also a punishment, like to go to the heavenly planets because, you live for such a long time without Krishna. So, yeah. So Krishna comes here to give us transcendental knowledge so that we can make use of this human life and get free from all of our karma and go back to Godhead. So Krishna is very concerned, and that's why he comes again and again to this planet to make sure that there is religious practice. And really, if you think about it, there's not a lot of, hellish planets, they're not doing religious practices. In the heavenly planets, they're not doing a whole lot of religious practices either. Not like here. Maybe in the higher planets, right? Like Tapaloka, Janaloka, Maharloka, they're worshiping the Lord for sure. But when you hear about Swargaloka, you don't hear about people like going to temple, paying obeisances, offering arti. You just hear about them dancing and singing and getting their celestial airplanes and going on pleasure trips and how beautiful they all are, and they're drinking somarasa and getting intoxicated and dancing and all these things. They're just partying up there. So earth is the place, and it's the place of religion. It's the place where we have choices, and it's the place from which we can go back to Godhead. And that's why I said that the demigods are actually lining up to take birth on earth in this Kali Yuga, because Lord Chaitanya is so compassionate that he gave us a process of religion that all we need to do is chant Hare Krishna and we can go back to Godhead. So really, like, if you think about it, we are in the best possible situation in the whole universe, right? Don't try to go to the heavenly planets, because they're trying to come here because they're more intelligent than we are, and they can see that this is the best place to be right here, right now, planet Earth in a human form. Because see, the demigods, they live for so many years. They live for 100 years, celestial years, which each one of each day of their year is like 6 months of our days, 6 months for us. So when we pass 6 months, only a day for them passed. So they live a very, very long life. So here, when they look from the heavenly planets, when they look down on Earth, they see, oh, these people on Earth, they live a very short life. Basically, they're born and within, maybe a month, they're gone, a month of demigod time or something. They're just like die. And in that very short span of time, all they need to do is chant Hare Krishna and dance and take prasadam, and they go back to Godhead. Sign me up. It's like the express train back to Godhead right here on the earth. So yeah, our position is very enviable. It's very rare, very special, very wonderful. So we have to take full advantage of having a human birth on this planet just 500 years after Lord Chaitanya came, when so many pure devotees, so many Nitya Siddhas have come down, and Lord Chaitanya gave us the highest thing, the divine couple Radha and Krishna. He gave us access to the highest rasa, Madhurya rasa, and taught us, in the six Goswamis and Acharyas, all the Gaudiya Vaishnavas are teaching us how to follow in the footsteps of the Brajabasis, how to worship and love Krishna, not just, with awe and reverence, but with intimacy and sweetness and friendship and love. This is like, even in Satya Yuga, they didn't know about these things, and here we are in Kali Yuga, and we have access to this inconceivably sublime knowledge, and so don't miss the opportunity. Shobha?
Hare Krishna Mataji. Am I audible?
Yes.
Mataji, I have a question about, as you say that Bhagwan will never take incarnation and Bhagwan will never take avatar on other planets. Is this only
I didn't say
Prithvi?
I didn't say never. I said that it's less, it's more rare. It's less frequent than on the earth.
So on other planets there is no karma.
Definitely in the hellish planets, no karma. Yeah, and the way I understand it is that even the heavenly planets, they're not really accruing karma. They're just diminishing the results of their pious karma that they accrued on earth.
Okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. Gitika.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Mataji, I have a question that how animals get their next life. Like if they don't
Yeah.
have karmas, so how they get their next life? Like we are as a humans, we have our sanchit karmas, our prarabdhas and our prarabdhas. So
Yeah.
in that phase, we get our
Yeah.
we do
So
our
what
karma.
happens with animals is they just get promoted to the next higher up species of life, right? So they take birth, maybe as like, an insect, or maybe they take birth first as a plant, and then they die in that as that plant, and they become like next higher species of plants, and then they become an insect, and then they become a reptile, and then they become a bird, and then they become a whatever, a mammal, and then they become a human. So it's an automatic sequence. It doesn't matter what they do in their life. They die a natural death, they go to the next up species. They're on the upward.
Okay.
They're on the upward climb.
Okay, Mataji. Thank you.
That's why we shouldn't kill animals, because if you kill an animal, if you let it live its whole life and die a natural death, then it goes to the next higher species. But if you kill it before its lifetime is naturally finished, then it has to take birth again in the same species again and again. So what we do is we block its progress. We prolong its time in that species, so it takes longer time to become a human again, and then they just stay stuck in ignorance for so long. So it's better to just let the animals die naturally. Prem Chand.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
I have a
Krishna.
question from the text 7.
Okay.
Yes, here it is. Here it is written, and you have also mentioned that whenever the dharma is in a danger, or the people, other people, devotees are in danger, so that the God comes to the earth and teach the lesson. So according to my perception, and however I have studied that earth has always been in danger, and according to if we see in the past that the world war happened, that the whole world was fighting, and today even we see the Kali Yuga, the whole people are fighting and not coming to the dharmas. So
Yeah.
why means The planet Earth is
Where is
always in
Krishna?
danger, so waiting to come.
Yeah. So one thing is that, yeah, Prabhupada says that these wars, yeah, that sometimes when people are very sinful, then Krishna arranges a war and he puts all the sinful people on one side and all the other sinful people on the other side, and he just makes them kill each other. And that's one way that he cleans up the planet. So, yeah. Prabhupada said like that. He said that the wars, these world wars, are reactions to mass slaughter of animals. Because people are killing so many animals and especially killing so many cows. So therefore there has to be wars in the world because the bad karma that's accumulated from all of the animal slaughter. And so people need to get slaughtered to, yeah, as a reaction for the animal slaughter. So that's also part of Krishna's plan, right? Sometimes Krishna does things directly and sometimes he just makes arrangements, right? Sometimes he comes personally and kills the demons, and sometimes he just makes an arrangement. He'll just bring about, like a tornado or a flood or a hurricane or something like that. And yeah, things. And okay, so then, but sometimes it seems like even, pious people suffer, religious people suffer. So why is Krishna not saving them? Why is he not descending? And so in Kali Yuga, yeah, well, one thing, Lord Chaitanya came when the situation was really bad. The time of Advaita Acharya was trying to preach. No one would listen to him. Everything was corrupted. And then he was calling out to the Lord. He's like, please, he was worshiping in Shaligram Shila, praying for the Lord to descend. And Lord Chaitanya came. So Lord Chaitanya gave us the holy name. He gave us the Yuga Dharma. And so now, even though it's bad, because it's Kali Yuga has to be bad. That's the way it's supposed to be, is bad. Right? That's what Kali is. Kali means quarrel, hypocrisy. It means it's a bad age. Ocean of faults, right? But the thing is that Krishna is here. He did come and he's still here in the form of his holy name. So that's why he's not descending personally now, is because he's already here in the form of his holy name. And the holy name is being spread all over the world gradually. So anyone who really wants to be free from the suffering, all they need to do is chant the holy name. And they have the shelter, they have the mercy, they have the blessings, they have the, purification to live a good life as devotees of Lord Chaitanya in this world. So there is a shelter, right? There is a way to be religious, to be happy. And no one can stop that. So it's not that bad. That's the thing, is it's not that bad because we still have access to religion. And like I was saying, we have even better access to religion than the demigods. They're wanting to take birth in Kali Yuga. Because the other good thing, actually, the good thing about Kali Yuga is that, the difficulties are helping us to take shelter of Krishna. They're helping us to really turn to the Lord and call out to him and chant the holy names with sincere feeling, right? And so it's a good thing. It's good for there to be some problems. And then, so actually it's an ideal situation because we have the really, difficult problems and challenges and complexities of life. And we also have the most powerful process to solve all the problems, solve them for good. So, yeah, you could say there's not a decline in religious practice because the movement is expanding. The holy names are being spread. And now we're actually heading into a golden age of Krishna consciousness, according to whatever our acharyas have predicted, that this movement is going to expand now for the next 10,000 years. And there's going to be like a golden age of spiritual life where a lot of people are going to become devotees. Krishna consciousness is going to be very strong for some time. And then after that, then it's going to decline. And then it's going to get really bad. And then there's going to be no hope for anyone to practice religion. And then the Lord's going to come, right? When there's no opportunity to live a religious life, when everything is completely shut down and restricted, then the Lord's going to come as Kalki and he's just going to kill everybody. So that's when he comes. He comes when it's really bad, right? Hiranyakashipu terrorized Prahlad so much, right? Why didn't Krishna come immediately? Why didn't Lord Nrsimhadev appear the first time as soon as he tried to just poison him, or the first time he pushed him off his lap? He doesn't come, so he waits until it gets really bad, right? Till it gets to the point where he can't tolerate it anymore, and then he comes and then he kills the demons. So, yeah. Shobha, something else?
Yes, Mataji, I have another question. I wanted to ask yesterday, but time was over. So this question is regarding about chapter 3 and text number 42. There is a word
Yeah.
neophyte spiritualist. Can you please elaborate this word or brief this? What is the meaning of this word? Neophyte
Which word?
spiritualist. Neophyte spiritualist.
A neophyte spiritualist. From the purport to text 42.
Ji.
Well, neophyte means, it just means new. So it means, okay, here it
New.
is. Yeah, a neophyte spiritualist is generally advised to keep aloof from the objects of the senses. So yeah, if somebody's very new to Krishna consciousness, then it's good for them to, keep a distance from the objects of their material desires, right? Because they don't know how to interact with those objects in a regulated, controlled way. And so they'll tend to indulge in those things. So that's why, when we first come to Krishna consciousness, some like living in an ashram is very favorable, right? Because you're living with devotees and you don't have opportunities to go to the movies, to go to restaurants, to go out and, have a boyfriend, girlfriend relationship or something. You don't have those opportunities. You're aloof from those objects of your senses. But then after, you practice Krishna consciousness for some years and you become spiritually strong, you take initiation, you become very resolved, very determined in your resolve to live a devotional life, then you can go out into the world. Then you can get married and you can work and you can interact in the world without any danger because you're trained, you're strong in your Krishna consciousness. Okay, so neophyte just means a new devotee.
Thank you, Mataji.
All right, we better go on. So let's go to text. We read text 8. Oh, we didn't talk about it yet. So text 8. So we talked about when Krishna appears. And text 8, he talks about why he appears. So he gives here 3 reasons: to deliver the pious, to annihilate the miscreants, and to establish the principles of religion. So, yeah, we see that when Krishna appears, he kills so many demons, right? He kills all these demons starting from Putana and Shakatasura and Trinavarta and then so many more that come to Vrindavan, and then he goes to Mathura, kills Kamsa, and then he kills Kalayavana and Jarasandha and so many others, right? Shishupal and Dantavakra, like that. So Krishna, and of course the Battle of Kurukshetra is Krishna's arrangement, where Krishna doesn't kill anyone, but he arranges for Arjuna and the Pandavas and their allies to kill so many demons. But then Prabhupada says here in the purport that as far as the atheistic are concerned, it is not necessary for the Supreme Lord to appear as he is to destroy them, as he did with Ravana and Kamsa. The Lord has many agents who are quite competent to vanquish demons. That's what we're talking about, that Krishna can just arrange some natural disaster or some world war to kill these demons. But the Lord especially descends to appease his unalloyed devotees who are always harassed by the demoniac. So Krishna, he doesn't like go out of his way to do anything for the demons. Like Krishna's not bothered by demons, and he doesn't have time for demons. He comes for his devotees, right? Krishna comes because he loves his devotees. He comes to have loving exchanges with devotees, to protect the devotees and maintain the devotees and give shelter to the devotees. So for Krishna, it's all about the devotees. His attention is on the devotees. What happens to the demons? Krishna doesn't really like get involved with that very much. That they get taken care of by the modes of material nature, material energy. Durga Devi pokes them with her trident and all those all of her 10 weapons, right? She finishes them off. But Krishna comes to protect the devotees, to appease, to pacify the devotees. And if the devotees are being harassed by a particular demon, then Krishna will kill that demon, but but his focus is on the devotee. Right? His focus is not on the demon. His focus is on, I'm just going to do whatever it takes to protect my devotees and make them happy and safe. So, yeah. Prabhupada says, Lord Krishna appeared primarily to deliver Devaki rather than kill Kamsa. He came to deliver Devaki, to fulfill her desire to have a son and to get her free from the prison and enable her to live a healthy, normal life. So, very sweet thing about Krishna. Yeah, Prabhupada continues here. He talks about all the different, he says, not just when Krishna comes as Krishna, but in any of the avatars, any of the incarnations, and he lists. Oh, Gaitara, you're yelling here. You have to mute yourself. 6 different kinds of avatars: Purusha avatars, by which he creates the universes; Guna avatars, by which he controls the 3 modes of material nature; Leela avatars, by which he performs his different pastimes, like all the Das avatars; Shakti Avesha avatars, who are Jiva Tattva souls, who he empowers to perform, extraordinary services on his behalf; Manvantar avatars, those are the Manus that give guidelines for human beings and in the different different Manvantar ages. And then the Yuga avatars, who appear to propagate the Yuga Dharma, the process of religion for each one of the 4 yugas. So when he comes, even coming in any of these forms, he comes for the specific purpose of mitigating the anxiety of the pure devotees who are very anxious to see him and to see his pastimes. So that's what Prabhupada keeps emphasizing, that again and again. The prime purpose of the Krishna avatar is to satisfy his unalloyed devotees. Now Ria's yelling. All right, y'all, try to pay attention to the class. If you have to have some conversation during class, at least please have the decency to mute yourself so that it doesn't disturb us who are trying to listen. Okay. Sorry. No, Prabhupada is saying that when Krishna comes, when Krishna has some duty to, when there's some duty to perform, then he does that through the other incarnations. But when Krishna comes himself, it's only to please the devotees. Yeah, Prabhupada makes a difference between Krishna, Krishna and the other incarnations. So that's the thing about Krishna, is that Krishna comes to display his pastimes and to give pleasure to his devotees and to attract all of us to go back home, back to Godhead. Okay. Oh, Premchand, do you have another question?
Yes, ma'am. I have a question. That here it is written that whenever difficulties happen, and you were talking about the Kamasya and Ravana. So my question is, they all were sent, and because all the things exist in this material world are created by the God. So God is Himself sending the Kamasya and Ravan, all this to the earth world. So they are coming and creating disturbance, and then God is coming to re-establish it. So why God is creating when God knows that these people will go on the earth and will create such kind of disturbance to their devotees and all that?
Yeah. Okay, interesting question. So some of these demons are actually, like all the incarnations of Jai and Vijay, like Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, then we have Ravana and Kumbhakarna, then we have Shishupal and Dantavakra. Those 3 incarnations of those 2 brothers, they all come as demons, but they all come for Krishna's pastimes, right? To facilitate Krishna's pastimes when Krishna wants to fight. So they're actually devotees, but they come as part of Krishna's Leela. So things that happen in relation to those demons, or so-called demons, or apparent demons, that's all part of Krishna's Leela. And then there are actual demons. right? They were actual demoniac souls who take birth in this material world because of lust, anger, greed, envy, and all that. And then due to the influence of passion and ignorance, they become increasingly demoniac. And then Krishna just puts them to take birth into demoniac families, and they just birth after birth become more demoniac and terrorize the devotees and terrorize everybody and do sinful activities and basically, you know, destroy the world in different ways. So those ones are not, you know, Krishna's Leela. Those are, you know, misuse of free will that Krishna has sanctioned. Right? Because Krishna gives us our independence. So if somebody wants to act like a demon, then, you know, Krishna allows them to be a demon, but then, you know, when they terrorize his devotees, that's where Krishna draws the line. Right? When they harass his devotees, then they're done. So yeah, Kamsa was a demon like that. So Kamsa wasn't, you know, Jai or Vijay. Kamsa was just a demon. And so, you know, but he had some backstory from his past life where, you know, that qualified him to be killed by Krishna and get liberation. So yeah, so he got the good fortune of being killed by Krishna. Then there are other demons who are really demons, like Vena, who didn't get killed by Krishna because he didn't even have the good qualities to deserve being killed by Krishna. So he just got killed by the Brahmins chanting some mantras, which also was good for him. Right? So yeah, like nowadays, people who are demoniac, they're not like big demons, you know, like Kamsa, they're just like small, you know, conditioned soul demons. And so, you know, they just get killed in different ways, you know, by being murdered or, you know, assassinated or getting a disease or having a heart attack or, you know, like that Mr. Nair that was giving Prabhupada so much trouble when they were trying to establish the temple in Bombay. Then, you know, Krishna arranged that he has a heart attack just to make him stop harassing the devotees and trying to cheat them and disturbing and destroying the work that the devotees was trying to do there. So like that, Krishna has different ways. So yeah, everything, Krishna sanctions everything, but it's not that everything is, you know, it's not that the demons are just acting exactly the way Krishna wants them to act. Right? There's also what Prabhupada calls unwilling sanction. That, you know, they're misusing their independence. Krishna would prefer if they use their independence to serve him. But they choose to use their independence to hate him, go against him, and harass his devotees. That makes them demons. So then Krishna has to arrange for them to stop those activities. Okay? But then also on this planet, there needs to be some demons, right? You know, when Maharaj Parikshit left this world, he died by snake bite. And then afterwards, his son Janmejaya was doing this big sacrifice to kill all the snakes on the planet. He just wanted to make all the snakes, all species of snakes extinct because he was so angry that a snake killed his father. So he was doing this yajna, chanting the mantras, all the Brahmins, all the snakes from the universe were just falling into the flames of this huge sacrificial fire and dying. And then, can't remember who it was, but someone came along and said, you have to stop this because you're going to put an end to all the snakes. And Janmejaya was like, what's the problem? Who needs snakes in the world? And then they said that, no, these snakes, they're created for a purpose, right? They're created by Brahma. There has to be fear and there has to be, you know, difficulty in this world because that's how the world is. So the material world is a place of ignorance and darkness and suffering. So if the material world is not miserable, it's not what it's supposed to be. Same thing as when the demigods, they drank that soma rasa, right after the churning of the ocean of milk, they drank the nectar of immortality and they became so strong. They were killing the demons right, left, and center. They were just like finishing off all the demons. And then I think Lord Brahma came down at that time and he was like, stop, you know, like there's not going to be any demons left. And they're like, good. Isn't that a good thing? Brahma said, no, there should be some demons, just to, you know, keep a few. Because otherwise it's not the material world. There has to be demoniac and divine forces here. So even as we move into like golden age of Krishna consciousness on this planet, it's not that everyone's going to be a devotee, right? There are going to be a lot of devotees, and there are going to be a lot of very good devotees, pure devotees, but there are also going to be still demons, right? The way I've heard that devotees saying is that what happened will be there will be like a polarization, that the demons will go on becoming more demoniac, but the devotees will become more strong. And it will be very clear, the distinction between divine and demoniac will be very clear, and people will be able to, more people are going to choose to be devotees, seeing how bad the demons are. You know, like, I don't want to be with them, they're just really evil. So that's a good thing, because it helps us to appreciate the divine, saintly people, right? When we see that there are demons. Okay, good. So now in the next verse, Krishna is going to tell us the benefits of understanding all these things. So someone please read text 9. Poonam. Oh, Poonam, we can't hear you.
One who knows the transcendental nature of their appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains the eternal abode. O Arjuna.
Okay.
Mataji,
Yeah,
like,
so Krishna.
Okay. That's
No,
fine.
just stop. Just pause there. So yeah, Krishna is saying that if we just understand this, if we're just able to understand how Krishna's appearance in this world is not like our appearance, how Krishna comes in his own self-same spiritual form, his eternal original spiritual form, and how his activities in this world are also transcendental, right? Everything that he does is completely pure, completely spiritual, all good, beneficial to everyone. Then we can go back to Godhead. It's as easy as that. You know, it's easy. That's why this transcendental knowledge is so, so important, because just by understanding the nature of Krishna, who he is, and how everything that he does is perfect, then we can put all of our faith in Krishna, and we never have to take birth again in this material world. So this is a great, great boon. That's why it's very important for us to understand Krishna. Yeah. Otherwise, see, Prabhupada is saying the purport that these yogis and impersonalists, they're trying to get liberated from the cycle of birth and death, but because they don't understand Krishna and they don't take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, then even if they do get liberation and go merge into the Brahmajyoti, it's very likely that they're going to end up returning to the material world, because they get bored and lonely up there in the Brahmajyoti, nothing to do, no one to talk to. You know, it's not a happy life up there in the Brahmajyoti. So they have to come down here just to have things to do and people to talk to and have relationships and, you know, so-called loving exchanges in the material world. But a devotee, because we understand that Krishna is a person and Krishna is never alone. He's always surrounded by all of his eternal associates. There are Lord Vishnu's and the Vaikunthas, and they have all their associates. And they're having all of their activities, transcendental activities. So when we understand that the Lord is a person and has personal associates and personal activities, then we're like, oh, wow, I would like to also be one of those associates. I would like to be a personal associate of the Lord and associate with his eternal associates and serve together with them and serve the Lord and love the Lord and feel the Lord's loving reciprocation, because that's really what like completely satisfies the soul, satisfies to overflowing. And then when we go back to that personal realm, either in Vaikuntha or Goloka, and we can personally serve the Lord, then we're never going to come back here again. Right? We came here once, we made the mistake already. And so we learned our lesson, and we're never going to take birth again because we're fully satisfied. Whereas Brahmajyoti does not satisfy the soul. So we really have to understand the Lord's. But if somebody misunderstands and thinks, oh, Krishna, he just took on a material body and his activities are material, then they don't have the aspiration to serve Krishna as a person and engage in support his activities, or do a service, be active in those activities. They'll just want to merge. So they'll reject Krishna's activities as Maya. That's what the Maya bodies do. So then they're going to have to take birth again. And that becomes a problem for them. All right, let's go on. We shall read. Hold on, schedule here. Let's read 10 to 12. Ishvar?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Mm-hmm.
Being free from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me, and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past become purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attain transcendental love for me. Text 11. As all surrender into me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Vatha. Text 12. Men in this world desire success in fruitive activities, and therefore they worship the demigods. Quickly, of course, men get results from fruitive works in this world. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so here Krishna is talking about more of the benefits of understanding him. That if we understand him, then we're going to take refuge in him. We're going to take shelter of him. And by taking shelter of him, we become freed from all of our material attachments. We become free from fear because we understand that who's controlling everything is Krishna, and nothing happens without Krishna's sanction, and that Krishna loves us, so he's not going to let anything bad happen to us. So there's nothing to be afraid of, right? Everything that happens is all good because Krishna is all good, and he's the all good supreme controller. So then we don't have to be afraid of anything. We don't need to even get upset about anything. We don't need to be angry about anything because we'll just see everything as Krishna's mercy. Even if someone insults us or offends us, we'll be like, okay, somehow Krishna arranged this for me. And because of my karma, I'm having to experience this for my purification or to learn some important lesson, or maybe just to push me to take more shelter of Krishna. So we don't become angry at the agents of our karma or the agents of our purification. Right? We're just peaceful. And when we know about Krishna, his personality, his name, form, qualities, pastimes, then we can become fully absorbed in him. Right? When we understand his activities, when we hear his pastimes, we're like, these are Krishna's eternal pastimes. These are going on in the spiritual world. You know, I just want to know more and more about what Krishna does and how he interacts. And we can get very absorbed in him. And in that way, we get purified and our love for Krishna awakens, right? Because Krishna's very lovable. If we don't love Krishna, it's just because we don't know him well enough, right? Like if you see a person on the street, you don't know them, so you don't love them. But you get to know the person, and the person is a very nice character, a very kind and compassionate person, very wonderful person. So then the more you know them, the more you start to love them. So Krishna is the most lovable person. He's the kindest, the most amazing. Every quality of Krishna is just lovable. So, yeah. Prabhupada says here in this purport to text 10 that the reason that people can't understand Krishna is because the material concept of life is so strong, right? When we are too much on the bodily conception of life, too absorbed in materialism, Prabhupada says it's almost impossible for them to understand how the Supreme can be a person. Because we think, I'm a person, I'm this body. And this body is, what it is. So if Krishna is a person, he must also be his body and have a body like me. And how can God have a body like me? Like he can't be God if he suffers the way that people with bodies suffer. So because people are so materialistic, they can't understand anything beyond the material body and matter, then they can't relate to God as a person. They just think he has to be the opposite, right? That this material world has to be false. And because this material world has variety, spiritual world should not have variety. Because in this material world, everybody's a person. In the spiritual world, there should be no people, no personalities, right? And because in this material world, there's so much activity. In the spiritual world, there should be no activity. They just negate, right? The Prabhupada said, nati, not this, not this, not this, not this. And then they come out with nothing, right? So I would say, you're negating everything. What is your positive? What what positive do you have to offer? They don't have anything positive to offer at all. So yeah. So they need information, right? That's why we have this such valuable information that we have the positive alternative that no, there are people in the spiritual world. Krishna is a person and so many personal associates. He has so many activities. There's so much variety. There's so many activities, but it's nothing like these, materialistic activities. All the things are going on, but in their pure form. And this material world is a reflection of that pure form. And because it's the reflection, it looks like that, but here everything is just perverse. Everything is just messed up, basically. Okay, so then Prabhupada also addresses why people don't even want to understand Krishna. And the reason is because of fear. He says that because they're too materially absorbed, the conception of retaining the personality after liberation from matter frightens them. They're actually afraid to be people. Because the thing is that in this material world, they suffer because of being a person, right? People, we suffer because of other people, right? I mean, we may also suffer because of the weather or, something like that, but mainly the worst suffering that we experience is from people, right? Especially people that are close to us, that hurt us in different ways. People that we have close personal relationships with, they have a lot of capacity to hurt us in different ways, physically, emotionally, mainly emotionally, psychologically, to really hurt us, cause psychological damage. So people are like, the personal relationships are so problematic. I do not want to have personal relationships eternally. I just want to be done with people, right? After being hurt and disappointed and frustrated so long in the material world. So they prefer, Prabhupada says, they naturally prefer a kind of merging into an impersonal void. So the idea of impersonalism is very attractive if you're afraid of people. So yeah, and then Prabhupada gives a few more reasons. He says some people are just too materially attached. They don't give any attention to spiritual life. Some of them just don't believe, they just disbelieve in everything. They just don't believe in anything, and they just whatever. And then other people, they take a lot of intoxication and they accept their hallucinations as spiritual vision. Right? So that's a common thing that people take, like hallucinogenic drugs, and they see some lights or vision or something, a hallucination, and they think that's spiritual. That's the spiritual reality. Yeah. So this is what Krishna is referring to. So we need to be free from attachment. We need to be free from being too materially absorbed. We need to be free from this fear that makes us afraid of having eternal relationships with Radha and Krishna and their associates. And we need to be free from, anger that arises from frustration in material life. And then we can focus our minds on Krishna. Then in this purport, Prabhupada goes through the stages. He says that this, when we're free from attachment, fear, and anger, then we can start to trust Krishna. We can start to have a little bit of faith in Krishna. That, okay, Krishna is a person, but he's not like an atheistic, horrible, demoniac, materialistic person. He is a pure, kind, compassionate, forgiving, grateful, loving person. So then, all right, let me find out a little bit more about Krishna. And then that leads the person to sadhu sangha, to go take to the temple, to meet devotees, to ask questions. And then devotees explain, they talk about Krishna, they explain about processes of bhakti. And then that person engages in bhajana kriya. They begin to practice devotional service. And then by practicing that, then what happens? Anartha nivritti. They get free from all of their bad qualities and desires, material desires. And then when they're free from lust, anger, greed, and all that, then nishta. They become fixed in their devotion to Krishna. They become very determined in spiritual life. And then they practice with a lot of enthusiasm. And then from that, they get ruchi, they get a taste. They start really relishing the nectar of Krishna consciousness. They start to taste the nectar of chanting the holy name, right? The nectar of sharing Krishna consciousness, book distribution, and Harinam, and all that. And then because that nectar of Krishna consciousness is so sweet, then asakti, they become attached. They actually become attached to Krishna consciousness. Like they can't live without Krishna consciousness. They become attached to chanting the holy name. You know, they just become addicted to the holy name because it's so sweet, so wonderful. Service is so nice. And then because of the intensity of their attachment, then their emotions, spiritual emotions awaken. They come to the bhava platform. They start to feel actual ecstasy in Krishna consciousness. And then from that basically matures into prema, or love for Krishna. So like that, these stages are given in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, mentioned in the purport to text 10. And Krishna says that he rewards these, these stages of advancement to people according to their surrender. So to the extent that we surrender to Krishna, then to that extent, our faith grows, we get good association, the heart gets purified, we become fixed, we get a taste, we get the nectar, we get these, feelings, and we develop love for Krishna. So it's up to us. Krishna's basically saying, it's up to you. Krishna's ready to give us the greatest treasure. He's ready to give us Krishna prema. But he will give it to us to the proportion that we surrender. If we surrender partially, he'll give us a little part, he'll give us a little taste. If we surrender completely, then he'll give us a whole shower of nectar, like that. So Prabhupada says in the purport that everyone is satisfied according to one's desire to have. It says Krishna is the object of everyone's realization, right? Everyone is searching for Krishna. And thus anyone and everyone is satisfied according to one's desire to have him. So the more we desire to have Krishna, the more Krishna is going to show up for us. And also not just that, but Krishna reciprocates with, he says, Krishna reciprocates with his pure devotees in the transcendental attitude, just as the devotee wants him. So one wants him as a master, and so Krishna becomes a master and accepts his service as a servant. One wants to have Krishna as his friend, and so Krishna shows up as a friend. Krishna is friendly and, accepts that loving friendship from the devotee. Someone else wants have Krishna as his son, and so Krishna, he, reveals himself in the heart of the devotee as a small boy who depends on the person for their protection, for his care, and the devotee takes care of Krishna like a parent. And then if someone wants to have Krishna as a lover, that is possible, right? Even for us, that we can become a lover of Krishna, or we can assist in Krishna's conjugal loving pastimes with Srimati Radharani, like that. So, it says that Krishna rewards all the devotees equally according to their different intensities of love and according to their different moods of love. And he says in the material world, the same reciprocation of feelings are there, and they are equally exchanged by the Lord with the different types of worshippers. The pure devotees, both here and in the transcendental abode, associate with him in person. So we don't have to wait to go back to Godhead to get the personal association of the Lord, right? To serve him in these ways. But, when we become pure devotees, then Prabhupada is saying that both here and even here, we can associate with Krishna in person and render personal service to the Lord and derive transcendental bliss in his loving service. So, we'll do that. That will be done internally, right? Internally within the heart. One serves the Lord according to one's, desire to have a relationship with him. So, but all this depends on Krishna's mercy, right? It's not just our endeavor, but it's also Krishna's mercy. And especially when we get to the higher stages of bhakti, as you'll see when you do nectar devotion, it's practically like in the beginning, we can do the processes, and that's also the mercy, that's also Krishna's rewarding us. But even just by doing the processes, you feel like you're getting somewhere, right? Whereas you get to the higher stages of devotion, there's literally nothing you can do. You just have to beg for the mercy and keep begging for the mercy and keep trying to please Krishna and his devotees and begging for the mercy. And yeah. So Prabhupada says towards the end of the first, towards the end of the purport, he says, everyone is dependent for success upon his mercy alone. So even the yogis are dependent on Krishna, even the materialists are dependent on Krishna, even the impersonalists are dependent on Krishna for their success. Everybody's dependent on Krishna in everything they do. That's why Krishna says, everyone follows my path in all respects, because no one can do anything without Krishna's mercy, without Krishna's empowerment. So even atheists are following Krishna's path in all respects because, Krishna is enabling them to live their atheistic lives. And you could say, like, if you look at a map, let's say there's a big city, right? Like a big capital city, all the roads seem to be leading to that capital city. Like if you look at the map of England, so London is there. And if you look at the map, like South England, all the roads are going to London. Everything's going to London, right? So whatever road you're on, you're going to London, but some people might be going the other way, right? They're leaving London. So everybody's on Krishna's path, but some of them are on a path that's going direct to Krishna, and some are going, around to Krishna, and some are going backwards away from Krishna in a long loop-de-loop, and then they'll eventually come to Krishna. But the point is that because Krishna's controlling everything and he's empowering everyone is on his path in all respects. So, and Prabhupada says all kinds of spiritual processes are but different degrees of success on the same path. So ultimately there's one path, and that is the path of Krishna consciousness, and people are at different stages or different positions along that path. But ultimately the only way to really get back to Krishna is by bhakti. And then Krishna gives an example of one of those paths, which is worshipping, which is in text 12, he says, men in this world desire success in fruitive activities, and therefore they worship the demigods. So this is one way that people try to approach the Lord. They get confused about who the Lord is, and they try to approach him through demigod worship. But Krishna's going to tell us that it's him only who gives the actual results of the worship of the demigods. He's the one who bestows the gifts. Not the demigods are not, they don't have the power to do it themselves. Even their power comes from Krishna. And that's why they get results. But because they surrender to Krishna through demigods, not surrendering through the proper process, then they get material results, but they don't make spiritual advancement. Or it's very, very little and very, very slow. Okay, so let's just read, let's read 13, 14, and 15. We'll end this class today there. Go ahead, please. Yes, Daya. Can't hear anything.
According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the known doer, being unchangeable. Text 14. There is no work that affect me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruitive reaction of work. Text 15. All the liberated soul in ancient time acted with this understanding of my transcendental nature. Therefore, you should perform your duty following in their footsteps.
Thank you. Yeah, so Krishna just said that everyone follows his path in all respects. And so demigod worship is one facility that Krishna gives for people who are too materially attached to basically, pursue worldly pleasure, but at the same time make gradual spiritual advancement, at least be connected to the Vedic culture and the Vedic system. So now another facility which Krishna gives for people to gradually approach him is varnashram. So, and we've heard a lot about that already in the Bhagavad Gita, how by performing your prescribed duties and, you know, doing them properly, not trying to do someone else's duties, you get gradually purified. And Prabhupada says varnashram is stepping stone to spiritual understanding. So it means knowing our nature, acting according to our nature, and trying to connect that with Krishna. So Krishna creates the varnashram system as like a safety net, you know, that people can, if they can't practice, you know, just pure Krishna consciousness, then okay, just do your duty, do it properly, be responsible, and try to do it for the Lord. And then now Krishna in text 14, he gives a little disclaimer. He says, yeah, everybody's following my path in all respects, but those who do it indirectly or in the wrong way, they're going to get consequences, right? And I'm not responsible for those consequences. Who is responsible is the individual person, right? So if I choose not to worship Krishna, but to worship some demigod, okay, that's like better than nothing, but there will be karmic reactions for that because it's material activity. Or if I prefer not to worship Krishna, I'm just going to do my material duties and consider that my work is my worship, then okay, that's better than being lazy and, you know, doing nothing. But you're going to get karma for that if you're not doing it in Krishna consciousness. So Krishna says, yeah, people are doing these kinds of work. It doesn't affect me. He said, there's no work that affects me. I don't need anything from their work. And, you know, I've given you some different processes for different people just to try to help you, but ultimately you're responsible for your own choices. And Prabhupada gives this analogy in the purport. He says the proprietor, or the owner of an establishment, is not responsible for the right and wrong activities of the workers, but the workers are themselves responsible. Yeah, so somebody's working in a factory and then they do something dangerous and they hurt themselves, then, you know, you can't blame the owner of the company. This person did some, you know, anyways, I won't tell the story. But yeah, I have a friend who was working in a factory that makes cardboard. And then he told me he had a coworker that he came to work drunk one day. So he was drunk and working in this factory, and there's all this equipment, you know, moving on the assembly line and things. So he just did something really stupid. He just like jumped onto the assembly line and started going down the thing and trying to enjoy himself there. And then, yeah, he ended up getting hurt and getting fired. So, you know, you can't sue the head of the company because some, you know, foolish worker shows up drunk and does something ridiculous, right? That's their responsibility. So Krishna gives us this world, and he gives us, just like the boss gives them, you know, this is your work, this is what you have to do. So Krishna gives us this workplace, the material world. He, you know, gives us our duties according to, you know, our nature. And it's our responsibility to be responsible and do the work as, you know, according to our religious duties. But if we decide to do something else and act whimsically, then we can't blame the Lord, right? And there's another example, another analogy is that rains are not responsible for different types of vegetation that appear on the earth, although without such rain, there's no possibility of vegetative growth. So that's really easy to understand, right? That there's different kinds of vegetation. There's some beautiful flowers, beautiful, nice fruit trees, and then there's poisonous plants also, like poison ivy and plants that you just touch them and they sting you and give you like an itchy rash or something. So there's all different kinds. So the rain is giving life to all those plants. So, but you can't blame the rain. Oh, rain, why did you make this itchy, nasty plant that, you know, stings you when you touch it? You can't blame the rain. That's the karma of that plant, and that was your bad, your clumsiness that you like bumped into it. You know, don't blame the rain. So we can't blame Krishna for our, you know, mistakes and foolishness and clumsiness in this material world. And that's, Prabhupada goes on to say that. He says that the Lord, let's see, the created beings are of many varieties, such as demigods, human beings, and lower animals, and all of them are subject to the reactions of their past good or bad activities. the Lord only gives the proper facilities for such activities and the regulations of the modes of nature, but he's never responsible for their past and present activities. The living entity is responsible for his own acts. So that's something that we need to accept, is that we are responsible for our own suffering, for our own enjoyment, because we made certain choices in this life and the previous lifetimes that brought about whatever our situation is now, for better or for worse. We can't blame Krishna. We can't blame anybody else. 100% of the responsibility is on ourselves. So that means that we need to, rectify our own consciousness. We can't just sit around blaming other people and playing the victim. Oh, this person did that to me, and so I can't do anything. Nowadays it's very popular. So text 15, Krishna says that the liberated souls, they understood all this. They understood the transcendental nature of Krishna. They understood his relationship with this world. They understand that even though he, controls and comes to this world, but he's not responsible for what we do here, they take responsibility for themselves and they perform their duties properly, following. Yeah, and Krishna's telling Arjuna, you should do like them. You should do their duty. You should know that you're in this situation in the battlefield. This is due to your own choices. You took birth in this family, this Kshatriya family, because of your previous things. And now you're in this situation because of your involvement with this family politics and everything. So you got yourself into this, and now you need to do your duty accordingly, just like liberated souls in ancient times did, knowing that Krishna is the supreme controller, knowing that everyone is on Krishna's path and everyone is making spiritual advancement in one way or another. So Prabhupada writes in the purport that Arjuna's desire to retire from activities on the battlefield was not approved by the Lord. One need only know how to act. To retire from activities of Krishna conscious and sit aloof, making a show of Krishna consciousness, is less important than actually engaging in the field of activities for the sake of Krishna. So it's not that we stop acting, but we stop doing the wrong actions. We have to know how to act rightly and be very active in the right way, right? In Krishna consciousness. So that's the message here that Krishna is giving us. Okay, we better stop. How's everyone feeling?
Seems to be drained out today. Questions?
It was a lot. My God.
Yes. Like every day may not be the same. But
Yeah. Everyone's tired. Anyways, it's okay. There were some good questions earlier, and now we're kind of at time. So we can wrap it up. And see you tomorrow. All right, Krishna. Thank you
Jai.
for joining.
Prabhupadapriya,
Huh?
just one thing. Like I sent you a message, please to see that. Okay. All right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada
Jai.
ki jai, Samaveta
Jai.
Bhakta Vrinda ki jai,
Jai.
Gaur
Jai.
Premanandi.
Prabhupada Mataji ki jai ho.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Much Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.